Story 1. A good friend of a few years wasn't just wily and difficult to make plans with. They had a legitimate drug problem and hid from everyone because they were ashamed of it. As far as I know, they are doing better these days. Story 2. After years of knowing someone I thought was a friend, I realized that they only kept me around to be the butt of the joke. I gathered the courage to chime in with a joke about them for a change, only for it to be reacted to as if I'd committed a crime. Cue me being cursed out and told to mind my place. Story 3. I found out my dad has been left-handed his whole life, but he writes with his right hand because of school rules when he was a kid. It took me 20 years to catch that he does everything else with his left hand. Story 4. One of my best friends eats the paper you take off a straw. The first time I saw it, I was like, what the heck? He gave me a strange look and said he had done it every time for the past 10 years we had known each other. I suppose I'm not very observant. Story 5. One of my closest friends used to compete in figure skating. I discovered she never mentioned that even though we had been friends for years. She casually remarked that she used to compete at a national level during a conversation about childhood pastimes. I was taken aback. It was amazing to witness a whole different side of her, and she even showed me some old pictures and videos. Story 6. I noticed after about 6 years together, 3 of them married, that my husband has a very slight lisp. He was very shocked that I had just now noticed it. To be fair to myself, though, I have a hard time hearing. Story 7. About myself, I didn't realize until I was almost 20 that I play pool left-handed. I'm right-handed, and I noticed my cousin used the opposite hands I did while we were playing. I said, Andy, I didn't know you played pool left-handed. He said, I don't, you do. Turns out I learned to play pool by mimicking my dad, who is, surprise surprise, left-handed and just never put 2 and 2 together. Story 8. I had a longtime friend who I thought was just sensitive, but she is actually a perpetual victim and emotionally unstable, abusive to people who do not play into her victimhood. Story 9. After 8 years of friendship with my best friend, I found out that it really annoys her when people slurp. All these years, she put up with my slurping and never said anything because she loves me and did not want to hurt my feelings. Story 10. A former friend deliberately divided a friend group because, as a new wife, she didn't want her husband to have friends that he knew before she came along. Story 11. My coworker of 1 year annoys me with his stories about working in the Civil Air Patrol and meeting generals of the armed forces, constantly name-dropping. I was in the Navy when I was younger and don't really like to think about that time of my life. I finally realized it was because his dad and brother were in the military, and he could not join due to medical issues. That absence and missing out influence his entire personality. I've learned to give him some slack once I figured that out. Story 12. I realized my mom is just a child in an adult body, making mistakes, being confused, and trying her best to be a mother. Thanks, Mom, for showing me we are all still growing up no matter the age. Story 13. Realized in my 30s that my close childhood friend takes a lot of time and care about how he looks. Nothing wrong with it, just never crossed my mind, which is strange. Story 14. I had a really good friend in college. I actually still keep in touch with him, approximately 25 years after graduating. I became friends with him our freshman year and lived down the hall from him in a dorm my sophomore year. Super cool guy, he was one of the few kids on campus with his own car, even though it was an older Jeep. Towards the end of sophomore year, we were deciding what to do for spring break, and he casually mentioned his family has a house in the Florida Keys that we could go down to. Like 10 of my friends were going to go, and I thought the idea of driving 20 hours to get down there and squeeze into a house with 10 other guys seemed like torture. Turns out the guy is beyond wealthy. His house was apparently like a 10-bedroom mansion on an island with only 2 other houses. I later came to learn he had a huge 4-bedroom apartment in New York City in case his family went to the city and didn't want to go back to their house. He had a huge 10-plus bedroom on the Jersey Shore, like right on the water. It had a pool in the front yard and a 2-bedroom pool house. People walking along the boardwalk would stop and take pictures of the house. It was so crazy. His parents used their own private jet to fly his brother to and from college on weekends so they'd see him more often. All the time, he was the most down-to-earth, chillest dude I knew. He's still moving every 2 or 3 years, and when I get a Christmas card from him, I can't help but check the address, and it's always a bigger, fancier house than his previous one. Believe it or not, he was the second wealthiest person I knew. The first was someone whose parents owned the parking garages around most professional sports stadiums and arenas. Apparently, stadiums don't own their own parking lots and garages, and this guy's family owned many of them. Story 15. I've known my dad since I was born and realized last year that he doesn't wear a wedding ring. Before you say anything, he's not messing around on my mom. He's always at home or work. The reason is just that he has gigantic hands and thinks the ring would be inconvenient in his work as a welder. Story 16. After 30 years of knowing a friend, I noticed that she always has something negative to say about a person's husband or boyfriend. Nothing too egregious. He's always very busy. She does most of the work with the kids. He doesn't like animals and she's been dying to get a cat. These are very soft comments but set a negative tone on the relationship. In fact, while she will state that she likes the fellow, she will not provide a positive spin on any relationship. I wonder what she tells the girls about my relationship with my husband. Story 17. I noticed only a couple of years ago that my mom is predominantly left-handed. As many people her age or older, especially in a highly Catholic country, she was forced by her mom and probably schooled to write with her right hand. I think realizing so late in my life made me reflect on how much I actually know about her. Story 18. After a year of living with my now wife, whom I had known for a few years at that point, I looked over at her on the couch and realized her eye makeup color matched her outfit. "Oh, cool," I said. "Your makeup matches your outfit today." She gave me a disbelieving stare and said, "I match them every day." Story 19. I noticed last week that my fiancé has preauricular pits behind his ears. I guess they were more noticeable because he had an infection, and I had to clean them out, but neither of us ever knew about it. I didn't even know that was a thing, but I guess it's congenital. Story 20. I was sitting with my uncle, a man who has spent his entire life yelling at the television about politicians, when I realized he has never once voted. Years of shouting at the screen, and this man does not even fill out the ballot. That is like booing a game you did not buy tickets to. Story 21. We knew a coworker for years. We went out for tea or coffee in the break room every single day. A lot of coworkers would complain about their wives and how executives were idiots. Normal work-related stuff. On his last day, we found out he was married and that his brother was a vice president at the company or something like that. Story 22. I was in my 30s before I realized how much of an alcoholic my father was. My whole family, including grandparents, aunts, and uncles, all drank all the time, so I just thought it was normal. In college, during my senior year, I was moving into a house with 6 of my friends. When the day was over, they all asked me if I was okay, and they seemed worried about me. They were uneasy with the way my father literally showed up with a lawn chair and some alcohol. He set it up, drank, and watched me move all my things in while he made fun of me. This was my life, and I had no idea how wrong it was. It wasn't until I met my now wife, who told me it was not normal behavior. When we were dating, she hated coming to my house. I would go to her house, and her family was sober and so nice. It was like night and day. I was also suffering from drinking problems in my 20s and into my 30s. Like, it's just what adults did, right? It was normal for me to get blackout drunk on Friday and sleep all day Saturday, only to wake up and do it again. I had a big group of friends doing it with me, so it had to be normal, right? I would even think most people lied to doctors when they told them how much they drank. Doctors would always say, "You drink over 20 drinks a week? You need to stop." I'm in my mid-40s now. I'm a parent. I drink maybe 3 times a year and try to keep it as casual as possible. I do have that demon in me that makes me drink too much still, but I think I've got it contained, mostly out of fear of my terrible hangovers. My relationship with my father is not healthy. I don't want my kid around him if he's drinking. We only ever go to their house for breakfast because we know he'll be sober. But if we hang around past noon, he'll start drinking again. Yes, I've spoken to him about it many times, as have all my siblings. He's too far gone to make any changes now. Story 23. My husband and I were in a gaming group. Everyone except us was in their early 20s. All but one of them was single. The one who wasn't told us he was married. Little by little, we started noticing something strange. He'd bring up his wife a lot, but never by name, just my wife. While he'd bring her up, he never really said anything about her. No cute stories or funny things that happened. No mentions about her interests, how they met. Just nothing. He'd find a way to change the subject when we asked about her. She had a job, but he couldn't tell us where or what she even did for a living. She was supposedly picking him up at the game store after we were done gaming, but we never saw a car. We asked him to bring her in for a moment so we could meet her and say hi. He nervously said she was shy. We'd caught him in a lie before, but it still took us a couple of months to realize he had made up being married. We never could figure out why he was doing it, and we couldn't quite figure out how to tell him we knew he didn't have to keep the act up. Most of our group was single, a couple still lived at home, so there really wasn't any pressure to fit in. Story 24. It's amazing how you can know someone for years and then suddenly notice something new, like realizing they always hum a tune when they are happy, or they have a distinct way of pronouncing certain words. It's a reminder that people are endlessly fascinating. Story 25. I noticed that although my mom often talks like an encyclopedia, she's more emotional than rational in how she makes decisions and reacts to things in life. Story 26. I thought the rules we had about food and the comments my dad made about food were normal. It turns out he has an eating disorder and was projecting it onto us. Story 27. That friend who always said she was honest, and nobody can handle honesty nowadays, was just rude. Also, often people who say others cannot handle their honesty cannot handle you being honest back. Now, years later, I know at least 2 other mutual friends who say they now realize she was indeed rude and not a genuinely honest friend. Story 28. That my friend, who seemed just moody, hot and cold at times and emotionally immature, was actually totally unstable and bipolar, and was also later diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Made so much more sense. Story 29. I've known my dad all my life. A few months ago, I realized he carries his stress between his eyebrows like me. I saw him one night, and it felt like I was looking at myself. It made me realize he was probably 23 once and excited about life, and 10 years old once and wanted to change the world. Story 30. A friend that I had worked with for years would call me after I retired to talk about her work problems, etc. She talked on the phone one afternoon for over 2 hours. But any time I wanted to discuss a problem, she cut me off, not giving me more than a minute or so. Story 31. I have had a close friend for almost a decade. She's smart and cool, kind of an alternative type. She has tons of acquaintances. We're always running into someone she knows when we go out to see a band or have dinner. She's really likable. She's open and curious, and she has a good head on her shoulders. But there's always been something hard to crack about her. The best I could define it was that she comes across as very composed. Not phony, but maybe a little reserved or guarded. A month ago, I finally figured it out after meeting her for dinner. She has no sense of humor. It blew my mind to finally register this about her after so long. Story 32. I have known my friend for years and never realized how much they actually care about the little things I say. It was not until recently that I noticed how much they pay attention to what is going on in my life. Kinda made me appreciate them more and rethink how I show up for others. Story 33. Only kind when it serves them best, never kind because they want to be kind, never kind just for the feeling, but only kind for purely egocentric reasons. Yes, it felt hurtful to discover, especially since I myself like to be kind without demanding much in return because my genuineness truly wants well and good from my heart. Story 34. I never noticed my work friend has a specific color variation of gray and black in terms of clothing each day. For almost a year, she maintained the same style. Story 35. I noticed the other day that one of my closest friends for 15 years is incredibly selfish and always has been. He is, however, otherwise a great person, so it doesn't bother me. I just keep it in mind if I need to ask them a favor. Story 36. A friend of mine who gives me things upon things to watch, listen to, read, play, and is always so enthusiastic about it does so out of horrible trauma from being beaten and sexually abused throughout her childhood by her mother, father, and various family friends. The number of devils this world has is sickening. They've got this huge list of things to occupy the mind because they were having to disconnect from themselves so much. Finding that out made watching Lord of the Rings difficult for me. We ultimately drifted apart some years ago, but I hope they are doing well. Story 37. This one is silly. My best friend is allergic to eggs. I only noticed after 20 plus years of friendship that in open world foraging games, she never eats or takes the eggs. She said it never occurred to her that it's food. Story 38. It took about 3 years to find out my wife liked eating food at room temperature. Before that, she just left it out for a while, and I thought she must not be hungry, so I'd put it in the fridge. Upon discovering this, she was frequently annoyed with me. Then one night when she got annoyed with me, it clicked that she liked eating food cold. I don't know why she couldn't have just told me that,